And now, back to Cinemassacre's Monster Madness. Okay, so...
Yeah, this room looks pretty secure.
Alright, well, there's been many re-edits of Night of the Living Dead. I mean, it's pretty easy to find the original, but there's been certain, like, spoof versions. Like, of course, there's the Riff Tracks commentary, which is real funny. There's also a commentary that was done a long time ago, which was called Night of the Day of the Dawn of the Son of the Bride of the Return of the Revenge of the Terror of the Attack of the Evil Mutant Alien Flesh-Eating Hellbound Zombified Living Dead Part 2. Which was kind of like Riff Tracks before Riff Tracks, where they like redubbed the whole movie. But there's the 30th anniversary edition now, which was basically the original filmmakers. Not all of them. George Romero wasn't involved. I think it was John Russo who did basically what George Lucas did to Star Wars. It's basically the horror movie equivalent of that. And they added new scenes in the movie. I think one of the reasons they did it was to try and get the copyright back on the film, like to make a new film out of it. They could copyright that, which worked for that. And it's really a shame how all these guys who made this movie didn't see a dime out of it. But it's one of those double-edged sword kind of things. Like, it gave the movie popularity, and lots of people have seen it because of, a public domain has sort of helped it in some ways. With independent filmmaking, you gotta kind of do something for free first before you get noticed. You get noticed, and then, you learn from your mistakes and you move on. But anyway, the 30th anniversary edition, I think, was an interesting idea. I think it was a very interesting idea to go back and add scenes into a movie that had already been shot. For example, they get Bill Heinzman back in the role of the original zombie 30 years later, and they show how he escapes from his coffin. So I think it's real creative what they've done. There's shots, added shots of more zombies walking around, and they did the best they could to make it match with the film. But what went wrong was actually two things, which stemmed from one person. One is the music. They took out all this great music. They somehow dubbed over it with this horrible music I can't even describe. And the composer of that music also plays a part in the film as a priest. And these scenes of this priest go on and on and on and on. And it's terrible. I mean, it's just like, what were they thinking? Like, it was so bad. I need to get back to the film. Okay, anyway, this scene here, this is where Ben is... Oh, that 30th anniversary edition. I can't get it out of my head now. Fuck. Ben.
We were riding in the cemetery.
Okay, so I missed Ben's story, but Ben was talking about how he got to the house and everything that happened before, which is actually in a comic from Avatar, which is called Night of the Living Dead: The Beginning, which elaborates more on that story. Now Barbara's telling her story.
And he said, "Can I have some candy, Barbara?"
Like the story about the candy, he kind of said something like that, but it's not consistent, which is fine. People don't always remember things accurate, so I think it makes sense.
It's hot in here. Hot.
I don't know what's the point of the jacket there or whatever, but
and he said,
both of their stories kind of contradict a little bit. Like when Ben is talking about the zombies running after the truck and that the truck was on fire. Usually the zombies are running away from the fire. So certain things aren't correct with the zombie lore or whatever, but the character stories are a little fuzzy, and that makes it kind of interesting.
And Johnny kept teasing me and saying, he's coming to get you, Barbara.
If there's any scene where, you know, Barbara gets annoying, this is it. Like now, if you were sick of Barbara, like now you're really sick of her.
Why don't you just keep calm?
And I said, goody.
Like she didn't say good evening.
And
He grabbed me, and he ripped at me. Shut the fuck up! Yeah, it's like now you're just like, shut up.
We have to wait for Johnny.
He's dead.
We better go out and get him.
He's dead.
My brother is not dead!
And this is the moment. Oh! Where the audience cheer. I mean, I think anybody who just, you know, I mean, the reason he hit her here was so that they had a reason to like get her out of the movie for a bit. Like they kind of needed her character to be set aside. But Dwayne, I mean, he felt very uncomfortable about this because, like we said, you know, there was a lot of racial tension going on at the time, and for him to be a black man hitting a white woman on screen at that time, he felt like, you know, he's the one who people are gonna like, you know, give him some serious shit for. So, but I think I don't know how well the scene went, but I think that anybody who sees it today, it's kind of a funny moment in the film. We always have the radio telling us what's going on. So a lot of the movie is exposition, that we have the characters telling their stories. We have the radio telling us things. Right here, look at this shot. This is a great shot with the boards in the front. All these different like geometrics going on. We have the doorway, the vertical lines, and then we have the slanted, you know, lines with the boards, and how Ben is leaning in with that angle. So it's just these great little moments with really cool composition like this.
Some say they appear to be in a kind of trance.
This movie is all about the fear of what's outside. And in most of these classic horror movies, it's always a fear of what's inside the house. You know, like in Dracula, don't go to the castle, don't go to the house. You know, what kind of scary stuff might be going on inside that house. But here, the movie is all about the opposite. The soundtrack really makes this scene. It was a clever idea to have the radio broadcast playing over this. I mean, think about how boring it would have been if Ben just sat by the radio and listened to it. But no, he's doing stuff while we're hearing the radio. And the music here, even though it's stock music, it's so good. I would love to know where all these music cues came from. I know it came from a library called Capitol High Q, and I would love to know who owns that music today and where could you get all those cues. I mean, if it was old stock music that they sold at the time, like who has it now, and where could you get that music? And here we go, scaring the zombies with the fire. It all started with Frankenstein. Fire bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received word that
What is that, a table up on the window there? Ben is as resourceful as the filmmakers themselves.
Scheduled to convene within the hour. Members of the presidential cabinet will be joined by officials of the FBI and joint teams behind closed doors. The White House spokesman.
The house is all boarded up pretty good.
Says there will be an official announcement as soon as possible following that meeting. This is the latest dispatch just received.
He's a pro at this. With her out of the picture, sure helps.
Washington, D.C. now tells us that the emergency presidential
If it was
conference
just him, I think he'd have a better chance at survival. But he's always got to deal with others. Oh, but she's back. But now she's into her next phase of personality. She's gone from normal to hysterical to silent to really hysterical to knocked out, and now into her next personality, which is like silent. Just she sits there for most of the rest of the film. All right, well, the house is pretty secure. I love how he gets a little rest here, smoking a cigarette. He's done this before. It's just another day. Yeah, I feel like it's that part in the commentary where it's probably my break too, to just sit back. There's not a whole lot to say about this. He's going to get the gun now. You could tell that. I do have to say, doing this on Halloween, I think, is sort of following in the footsteps of Mark Borchardt, who once hosted Night of the Living Dead on live TV on Halloween back in like 2006, I'm gonna say, with Mike Shank. They broadcast it live from Wisconsin, and man, was it funny. They filmed a live made-for-TV horror film, the first ever live horror film on TV, and they had people call in to vote on the characters and all kinds of things, and it was hilarious. If you're a fan of American movie, you have to see it, but good luck finding it. Oh, and aren't you nice? You're gonna give me some shoes now. By the way, that window back there, he didn't do a good job boarding up that window. Actually, on one of the commentary tracks on the 40th anniversary DVD, they said that the house was on some kind of slope. So actually that window to them made sense because the zombies wouldn't be able to reach that window. But for any casual viewer just watching the movie, I mean, it just seems like he missed a spot.
Look, I don't know if you're hearing me, but I'm going upstairs now. If anything should try to break in here, I can hear it from up there. I'll be down to take care of it. Everything is all right for now. I'll be back to reinforce the windows and doors later. But you'll be all right for now, okay?
I'm not talking to you.
Okay.
Go fuck yourself.
Civil defense officials in Cumberland have told newsmen that murder victims show evidence of having been partially devoured by their murderers.
It's shots like these that go back to the real horror movie roots of the silent era, with all the German expressionist films like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Just a great shot. Love those shadows. And whatever that mark is on that wall, I mean, what's going on there? The corpse here, you could see her face for a very brief moment there, was played by the young Kyra Shawn, who also plays the child in the film.
The killers are eating the flesh of the people they murdered. Repeating
And
this
again,
latest bulletin.
there's the radio just telling us what we already know,
Civil defense authorities have told
but
that murder
for some reason it works. All these zooms, it just creates a feeling of suspense.
bodies shows conclusively that the killers are eating the flesh of the people they kill.
Yep, they eat the flesh.
And so this incredible story becomes more ghastly with each report. It's difficult to imagine such
And
a thing
these
actually
were the
happening,
first
but
flesh-eating
these
zombies,
reports
so
we have been
that
receiving
was
and passing on to you.
maybe why they
Have been verified
felt the
as
need to really
is possible in this
drive that
situation.
point home.
It is happening, and it would appear that no one
And now
is
the
safe
film
from
goes
this
into the next phase. Now we have more characters introduced.
I just
Ben really has his hands full now. He's got this crazy woman and now a guy who he can't agree with the survival tactics. Although Well, one of them's right, I think, but we'll find out by the end of the film.
That girl was screaming. You just got finished saying you couldn't hear from down there. Now you say it sounded like the place was being ripped apart. It would be nice if you get your story straight, man.
All right, now you tell me.
People just can't work together. It's like in the Twilight Zone episode, The Shelter. This is Carl Hardman, by the way, one of the producers and the voice on the radio at the beginning.
We have everything we need up here.
All these windows, you're gonna make them strong enough to keep these things out, huh?
Both of these guys have good points. And I think that's where this film starts to get really good, is where the drama starts and you start to actually start thinking about what would you do if you were in this situation and who would you trust.
But the cellar is the strongest place.
The cellar is a death trap.
When I showed this to some friends of mine when I was a kid, we had conversations about what would you do? Would you go in the basement or would you stay upstairs? And that's really great when you can start to forget that you're just watching a movie. You start pretending that it's a real scenario.
At least up here you have a fighting chance.
And there's the zombies, which, you know, the word zombie, we use it all the time nowadays. You know, it applies to the genre of films, but back then, a zombie meant the kind of slave zombie from the voodoo culture. Not dead people rising from the grounds, but just normal people under some kind of influence. They don't use the word zombie anywhere in this movie, although they do use the term ghoul, I think, later on, but technically it's not accurate because a ghoul is more like a creature who feeds on dead things, and they feed on living. Oh, right there, a squib, which is a little explosive to simulate a gunshot. Squibs weren't used that often before Night of the Living Dead. There was Bonnie and Clyde, which was the same year. That had one of the biggest shoot-'em-up scenes of all time. And then The Wild Bunch came out the year after this, which also had one hell of a shootout. So this right here is not the first, but one of the early examples of squibs. Cinemassacre's Monster Madness will return after these messages.